Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we're going to be doing a headlight replacement project on my 23 Raptor. So we're going to be installing a set of Diode Dynamics Elite Max headlights. A couple weeks ago I was down at the Diode Dynamics headquarters on an ambassador tour of the facility. I saw how they manufacture these headlights. I saw the technology and the science and everything that goes into those, and I figured I got to have those on my truck. So picked up a set while I was down there, brought them back. And here we go. We're going to be installing the video. Now they also have regular Elite headlights, not the Elite Max. The difference between the Max and the Elite is these bottom lights here. There's a couple off-road lights built into the headlight itself on the Maxes, whereas the Elite just has the projectors and everything. And I believe the turn signals are a bit different. So there's a lot of technology built into these, and we're going to go over that once I get them installed on the truck. But these are going to be a direct bolt-in. Before I get too far into the project, if you use my coupon code below, that'll get you free shipping in your Diode Dynamics order as well as a gift pack. I believe that's what they're giving out right now. But again, use that gift code to help yourself save some money when you check out at Diode Dynamics, but also it helps my channel, so I totally appreciate it. Anyway, let's dive into the project, and then once we get to the end, I'll walk you through some of the cool functions of these headlights as well as how to program some of the additional features. And then we'll take a look at pre versus post light output versus from the factory versus the Diode Dynamics ones. So anyway, let's get the hood popped and start working on replacing some of these or pulling some of these parts off the truck. All right, so unfortunately, unlike the olden days when you just pop headlights out of the truck without a lot of work, this requires a little bit of work, I guess. Some of the parts need to be removed. So we're gonna have to take off our top little shroud here. We're gonna have to take off the grill. And then in order to get the grill off, we're gonna have to take off this bottom fascia piece, and in order to get that off, we need to pull off the corner of our fender flares. So where are we going to start? Well, we'll start up here with taking off the upper shroud. Now I have the cob shroud. There's a couple bolts here. If you have the factory one, it's just all push pins, but it's very simple, very self-explanatory. So I'm going to get all these push pins off. Then the next thing we're going to do is go inside each of the wheel wells. We're going to undo the two 7mm bolts on the inside of each of the fender flares, just on the front. We don't need to undo the whole thing. And then we're going to give this guy a little yank, pull it off. That way we're going to be able to pull this off because this is all pressure clips holding that guy in. But I totally forgot, in order to do any of that, we got to get our light bar off. All right, so I got my light bar off out of the way. We got our shroud removed from the top. Again, it's just a bunch of those tree clips. Now, like I said, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to undo the two 7mm screws that are inside the fender flare here. So there's one right here, one there. That's all you need to do. And then what we're going to do is reach our hand up underneath here and then just get a hold of the fender flare and just pop it straight off. The reason we need to do that is because we need to get this fascia off, this little plastic piece, because we need to get access to the bolts underneath the grill and then the bolts on the underside of the headlight as well as the ones up on the top side so we can get these things out. So once you got the screws out of the inside, I like to wear a glove that's got some grip on it because it's kind of a weird angle underneath here, but you just basically grab the bottom side of the fender flare and that's it. Again, it's an ugly noise, but that's just the clips undoing, and if you do it properly and don't pull too hard, you should get enough. You don't need to pull it all the way off, just enough so we can get our hand in here and then pull on this guy, because that's the next step. So we're gonna do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll pull this whole plastic piece off, get it out of the way, and then I'll show you where the screws are for the headlights and the grill. All right, once you get your fascia piece off here, you're gonna go ahead and turn your attention up here, and there's a couple plugs you undo. So there's the camera, there is the washer fluid nozzle for said camera, and then there's a plug for your active grill shutters. All that stuff just needs to be unplugged. I believe we also got to undo this guy. This is for the Raptor marker lights. I'll get that when I got two hands. And then after we undo those plugs, and since we already unbolted the screws up on top, all we got to do now is go down, and there's 8mm screws here on the inside. The inboard ones on the Raptor are the ones we're going to remove in order to get this grill off. So with the grill, we're just going to pull it off, and you can see I have a cable here. The reason why this cable is here, that's a front camera I have for my Wolf box, and I have heat shrink on here, and I don't want to cut this open, so I'm just going to pull the grill off and just lay it in front, and then once we're done, we'll just put it right back in there. That way I don't need to separate this wire here, and I got some slack anyway. All right, now that we got our grill moved out of the way, again, I can't take it completely off because I have wires going through there, and they're all zip tied to the back, and it's very clean, so I'm just going to leave it, and we're just going to move that side to side when I got to get the headlights off. But anyway, last few pieces to get the headlights off. First, there is a bolt here we're going to need to remove. There's a nut there we're going to remove. Those are the only two on the bottom of the headlight. Then we're going to have a 10mm here, 10mm here, and then a push pin here. Once you undo that, you should be able to pull the headlight straight out and then unplug it on the back and get it off of the vehicle. Okay, so I have the passenger side headlight out. Now we're going to talk about wiring harnesses. So there's two harnesses that come in the Elite Max kit. The first harness is the one that goes from your factory plug into the plug on the back of the headlight. And in that, you see a two-prong DT connector. Now there's another harness right here. And this is what's included with the Elite Max ones, because this is the harness that will power the off-road lights and the bottom of the headlight. So you have some options here. You could use that. There's a relay built into it. You could tie it into, let's just say, a switch. It comes with a little push button switch, or you could tie it into your aux switch. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna hook this DT connector up to my D switch so that I could tie it into my D switch panel on the inside of the truck. So that way when I turn on the front lights, so my A pillars and the light bar, the headlight ones are also gonna come on as well. So like I said, you got a bunch of different options. You just need to get power to this because ground's already baked into here. So you just need to get 12-volt source here. And like I said, I'm gonna tie it into one of the open circuits on my D switch. But what I'll need to do is kind of rip apart the harness that comes in the kit, cut it out. That way I can have some wire length to run over to the D switch there. All right, so it wasn't too complicated. So I went ahead and took my wiring harness. It's right here. Got our DT connector here, and then I just cut the 2 DT lengths off of that relay harness that comes in the kit. Like I said, I'm gonna plug it right into the D switch. All I need is the wire and the plug. I don't need anything else with the relay or anything like that. I got plenty of open spots there. So just went ahead and tested taped it on one side, tested taped it on the other side. Nothing's gonna bounce around. Now we're good to go to plug this into the back of the new Diode Dynamics headlight and just pop it back into place, replace our screws on top, our nut and our screw on the bottom, and then we're good on this side. We can turn our attention to the other side. Pretty simple. Headlights are really easy projects. Just take your time because a lot of the stuff is plastic and it can crack if you force it. So if you're doing this in the winter, definitely take your time because winter and plastic are not a good mix. All right, so we got the passenger side headlight set up. It's in, and you can see just kind of a functional test. Everything's working perfectly. So have the hazards on right now. So this is the turn signal. There's a few different options you have for this. So stay tuned to the end of the video. I'll show you all the features this guy has. But now let's go ahead and swap out the driver's side, put everything back together, and then I'll show you how to program these guys because like I said, there's a bunch of functions of here, and there's some pretty cool things that these headlights can do that the factory ones can't. But so far, looking pretty sick. Look, it's kind of a cool F. Awesome. All right, well, let's get back to the program. All right. So I got both headlights on. We are good to go. I have the wiring for the off-road lights built into the headlight running across here, zip tied up everything out of the way. Also took advantage of the opportunity they had to grill off to pull the rest of the wires underneath there so we can clean all that up. But I did forget to run these behind the headlight. So I think I'm gonna pull the headlight off real quick, drop these behind it. That way it just conceals everything. But this is the DT, or this is the wire for the driver's side off-road light that's built into the headlight. What I'm gonna do is splice it into the one for the passenger side, and then just run a quick little jumper right into the D switch, and then we should be good to go. All right, so we got both headlights in, got the grill almost completely installed. We're about halfway through the reassembly of everything. This is a good time if you got a bunch of wires that you ran everywhere to start buttoning them up and clean them up. So you can see I had a whole bunch of wires running through the top here. Now I don't have anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall the shroud here. Then I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall that little, I don't know, what the hell, whatever the hell you wanna call that. The little plastic piece down here. Then I can get my light bars up on there and out of the way, fix my camera wire and everything. Then what we could do is turn our attention to the off-road lights inside the headlights. I need to splice these 2 wires together, and then I need to run a little jumper around my D switch up through the side and then inside there. So again, that should probably take the longest here, but again, overall, super simple. You can see the headlights. They're installed, they fit perfect. There's no obnoxious gaps or anything. They fit just like stock. So. All right, so we got the bottom facade thing put on. We got my light bar put back together. Got the wire and everything run from my camera, so that's no longer an issue. Got our upper shroud on. Headlights are installed. They look awesome. They really do look very close to what the stock ones were, which look great, and they kind of mesh well with the grill. Just a little bit of differences that make it really do pop nicely. But anyway, beyond the headlights, we now have our off-road wire run here, so I splice those wires together, so now I'm just left with a black and a red. Honestly, I don't think you even need the black wire because the lights themselves, if you remember, I pointed out that there's a DT connector on the back here, and there's only a positive prong on here. So honestly, I think I might just hold off on doing the ground there because I don't think it's even necessary. So let me finish up with the wiring here, clean that up, get all my zip ties clipped. Ah, crap. All the zip ties I put in here, I didn't clip any of the tangs. That sucks. Anyway. So I'm gonna run that wire and then we'll take a look at how these guys operate and then we'll talk through programming. All right, well there you have it. We got everything fully installed, ready to go to start playing with things. We got our off-road lights, so these 3 lights down at the bottom of the headlight, wired around into my D switch into port number 3. So we gotta go switch the sticker on the switch panel inside and we'll play with that once it's dark outside. But now what I'm gonna do is kind of mess around with this, figure out how to program it, and then clean up all the stuff in my garage. And then what I'll do is I'll walk you through the programming of a few of the sequences and just kind of show you the functionality of it. I honestly don't know how it works yet. I got to figure that one out, but that's the beauty of YouTube. So in a second here, I will show you how to program everything, but let's clean up everything at the moment. All right, before we get the truck out on a dark road to take a look at the lighting patterns, I want to show you how you could cycle through some of the programming modes to disable or enable or adjust some of the functionalities of the lights. So first thing we're gonna do is put our truck or turn our truck on, and then we're gonna cycle back and forth between off and parking mode. Now the number of times that you cycle on and off into those functions dictates what programming mode you're gonna be in. So if you go on, on, so 3 times you cycle to the on and then you leave it on, that will allow you to change the color of the DRL from white to amber, or just the bar for amber or whatever. But we're gonna go through that in a second. But anyway, it's that simple. So we're gonna go off, on a certain number of times. And then in order to cycle through the functions within each of the programming modes, we're just gonna use our brights, and that's gonna allow us to go through each of those modes. So let's get the camera set up and I'll talk you through each of the modes here, and then we'll get the truck out on the dark road and take a look at the lighting pattern. All right, we have our ignition on here, and now I'm gonna cycle into the DRL selection mode. So what this is gonna allow us to do is select the color of the DRLs on the headlights. So we're gonna go on, on 3 times, and then the headlight should blink once we're in there. So on. So there you go. Now it's confirming that it's in the sequence. So we're in amber. If I hit that now we're in just the white outside. Hit it again, and it's going to cycle through all the modes. So I'm going to cycle it back to the amber, which should be the next one here. So now once I'm in the mode that I want to be in, all I got to do is turn the headlights off, and that will save our programming function. All right, so now we're gonna pick our turn signal options. So we're gonna cycle the parking lamps on and off 4 times, leaving it on the 4 times. So go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it should start blinking with the current settings here. So if you see right now, I have the outside DRL bar is on, and then the little bar in the middle is on sequential. But if we hit the bright stock, it's gonna cycle through the few options here. So now the whole light is steady on with the whole thing. Let's go through the other options. So now you can see the whole bar is blinking, and then you got a sequential here. And then the last option here is steady on and off on the DRL bar. I personally like when the whole light is on the outside, and then this is sequential. So we're gonna go back into that mode here. And there you go. So this is the mode I like, where you have a solid DRL light on the outside, and then that little bar in the middle is the sequential one. So now that we got the mode that we want, we're just gonna go ahead and turn the lights off, and that'll save the functionality. All right, so that is how you do the programming, and there's several other modes that you can go through, but it's all just a sequence of on and off with the parking lamps a number of times to get you into the specific mode, and then using the bright stock on the steering column to cycle through the options in there. So the last one I'm gonna show you is show mode. So let's hop in the truck, and this one's a little bit different than the other ones, which is why I wanted to show you it. So before we cycle the lamps on and off, we're gonna turn on our off-road lights. Once we turn those on, then we're gonna cycle the parking lamps on 3 times like we would in the original DRL selection mode. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. And this is gonna be show mode. So it's just basically gonna do a whole bunch of cool stuff, and there's a couple different modes. So let's figure out which one it's on now, because I'm really not sure. Yeah, so there you go, cycling through amber and white. Let's go to the next one. So there you go, you get some strobes. This is the white strobe, and I believe the next one's gonna be your amber strobe. Yep. Then the last mode is white and amber strobe, so it's gonna go back and forth between the 2 colors. And then the last one will go right back to the beginning, which is our welcome sequence. And all you need to do in order to keep this function on is to leave that the off-road switch on. That puts it into this mode, and then once you cycle through. So this is pretty cool if you're at a show, or if you just wanna kind of show off for everyone at the parking lot. Here you go. Not something I would drive around with, but definitely something that has some cool functionalities and little, little niche things here and there that make the Diode Dynamics headlights stick out. So in order to turn that off, Super simple. Hop in our truck. We'll turn off our off-road switch and we're good to go. So now we're out of that mode and you can see the headlight is right back to normal here. All right, so we are on our dark road here. Got all of my backlighting turned off. We're gonna take a look at the factory headlights as far as their coverage and color. So there you go. By all accounts, for OEM headlights, the coverage is great. The color is awesome as well, but there's always room for improvement. But again, you can see decent throw way down there. I'm probably seeing about 40 yards down the road, which is great. You're not gonna blind oncoming traffic, but it's plenty so you don't overdrive it on roads, and you get nice coverage side to side. And also with the Raptor, you do get the headlights that turn when the truck is moving. But anyway, this is the factory coverage. Let's get the Diode Dynamics headlights installed and take a look at the coverage of those guys. All right, so we're back on our dark road. We got our Diode Dynamics headlights installed, got everything off other than the marker lights. Let's go ahead and turn our lights on. Boom. So what I like about these is the coverage side to side is a lot greater than the factory ones. The factory ones seem very focused and there's a hot spot right in the middle, whereas the diode ones do a very good job at kind of fanning all the area in front of you without being obnoxious and super high. So that's the low beams. So there's the brights. Hopefully it's picking it up. Yeah, you can kind of see it on the camera there. So anyway, brights, low beams. Now let me hop in the truck. Actually, we'll hold the camera up. And what I'm gonna do now is hit the off-road lights. So if you remember, there's the off-road lights at the bottom of the headlights. So hit those, and you see those basically double up as fogs and they really fill in that part in front of you. Obviously, you don't wanna be driving with those, but when you hook those up to an aux switch, you have the option to do that. And the beauty is, with the D switch, I could group lights together. So this is just the off-road lights in the headlights. So if I turn that off, and since I grouped those lights with all of my front lights, so my ditch lights as well as my SS5 light bar, if I go ahead and hit that, boom, light up everything from miles ahead of the truck. So I use these when we're up in deer country. That way we can avoid the deers. But anyway, turn it off. Here is the regular headlights. There's your brights. And here is just the off-road lights on the Diode Dynamic headlights. So you can already tell just a huge coverage improvement, as well as just an overall quality of light in front. It's a much better quality of light. It's a lot whiter versus yellow. So I just think it's the better, more efficient light in front of the truck. But anyway, let's get over to my garage. We can take a look at that cutoff pattern. You're gonna notice that with the projectors in these headlights, it's a very clean cutoff pattern. So let's go ahead and get home and take a look at that, and then we'll shut this video down. All right, and here are the factory lights up against the wall, just so you can see that cutoff. You got a little bit more spillover than I would anticipate with the headlights, so you can see a lot of glare kind of going up over that cutoff line. Really what you want is all of your light to be below that cutoff line, so you know you're having 100% or close to efficiency-wise with the lumen output from your headlight to what's actually shining on the road in front of you. But anyway, here is the factory one, so let's take a look at the Diode Dynamics headlight cutoffs. All right, and last but not least, let's take a look at that cutoff line, and this is a thing of beauty. So if you're anything like me, I grew up in the headlight retrofit craze. We were jamming projectors in pretty much any headlight we had. This cutoff line is absolutely beautiful. You can see there's two check marks basically in each of the little cutoffs. That's for each of the upper and lower projectors. The upper and lower projectors, and then there's our brights. So you really don't even need the brights because of how clean this line is. But anyway, this is my favorite part of the upgrade here, is basically how clean that line is and how white that light is and how efficient these headlights are. So they are brighter, they have a wider coverage, and then they have a much cleaner cutoff line, so you're not going to be blinding oncoming traffic. Plus they have all the bells and whistles and all those unique little programming sequences that you can do with turn signals, startup sequences, and what have you. Anyways, this is the installation video of the Diode Dynamics Elite Max headlights. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Again, don't forget to use my coupon code. It helps my channel, but it also helps you save a couple bucks at checkout. With that said, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.